back to Change Ed.
Change Ed.
We are super glad to have you here listening and tuning in to the #1 rated educational podcast right where you are. In your car, we are the #1 podcast. Or
in Pennsylvania.
Or in your ear, on your headset, on your earbuds.
Yeah, that was very presumptuous to assume they're in their car.
I know, but they might be driving to work being like, I need me a dose of Change Ed.
Mm-hmm.
I am your host, Andrew Kuhn, education consultant from Montgomery County Intermediate Unit number 23. And here with me is
Patrice and Andrew, also an education consultant out of the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit.
With that hard really emphasized.
Well, because we have pre-established you don't like when I add the all, but you're okay with it when you add it occasionally. So I don't know.
Right. Rules are rules, and there are exceptions to the rules. Yes. We have a special today. Not one special, double special.
I like how you avoid the whole idea of facing your inability to follow your own rules.
That special is that we had the opportunity to sit down with Brandon Langer, who also works at Montgomery County Intermediate Unit.
You've had him on the show.
Number 23. But also is a podcast host with his own show, MCIU Learns. And we had the opportunity to sit down and talk about this very podcast.
Its inception, where it's going. It was very lovely.
You get to hear a little bit more.
You get to hear me talk a little bit more than what Andrew normally allows. So.
Yes. So it will be awkward for everyone listening, but please hold on.
It will be amazing.
It's only one episode.
And then we'll be back to me being shoved in the corner.
So we hope you enjoy this edition of Change Ed, brought to you by our sponsor for this show and this show only, MCIU Learns.
It is my favorite when you just pretend like whatever I say doesn't actually exist.
Stay tuned.
Hello, Montgomery County, and welcome to the MCIU Learns podcast. My name is Brandon Langer. I'm the Director of Innovation and Strategic Partnerships at the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit in Norristown, Pennsylvania. And today I am joined by the esteemed Change Ed team here at Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, which is led by, well, I'm actually going to say someone's name's first here. I'm going to say this is a team effort with Patrice and Andrew Kuhn.
I was first.
Dang it.
She has seniority
in time here, not in reality.
I gotcha.
Okay.
See, we're already stepping on ourselves here, and we're only 30 seconds in. But
best podcast all day.
As you know, this is our conversation with leaders in the areas of education, right? We cover all things from MCIU programs to thought leaders that come in and present. I'm really excited to sit down with these two, though, and discuss their work with Change Ed, which launched last year in the form of magazine and a podcast. I know there's other elements to it we're going to dive into today, but Patrice, Andrew, you guys want to introduce yourself and your role at the IU?
So my name is Patrice Simacek. I work out of the Office of Organizational and Professional Learning, and I've been there for 12 years. I work a lot in the field of gifted and now STEEL. So I do a lot of work in math up to now, too.
Yeah, this is a true role reversal.
It's very weird to go second.
My name is Andrew Kuhn. I am an education consultant in the Office of Organizational and Professional Learning in Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. I've been here this is my fourth year.
You're starting your fourth year. Let's not give you more time than you have.
Yeah, starting my fourth year. I also work in STEELs and gifted. We dabbled in AI.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
There's like a lot of things in education that we're curious about and we're very interested in. So we always like to keep kind of our eyes on the horizon and see how it can integrate with the work that we're doing. Because there's, a lot of things that we always talk about this in education, how they end up in silos, but really they all can integrate and help each other out so much. So we do it, we're always
doing something.
There you go.
Well, and one of the things you've been doing, to start, we'll get into the magazine here in a second, but one of the things you've been doing is your own podcast. So those that have followed this one for a while know this was formerly the OPL podcast, and we converted it to the MCIU Learns podcast with a little bit broader focus. But the two of you didn't just hit the ground running. You hit the ground at a full sprint last year with well over 50 episodes to my count. I don't know where we are at this point, but in that time also hit, a pretty large amount of followership and people tuning in. To your point, Andrew, there's so many things to focus on. In the IUs, we're constantly at the forefront of different things across education, but I love the themes that you guys have pulled in, not just because of the content you're talking about, but the way and approach we're going about it and what we need to be doing. So what is the podcast about? Where do you center that because it does cover so many different topics?
It started out at this level in the IU. We're able to have all these amazing conversations with people across the state or even nationally or internationally. And so where it kind of formed for us was we're having all these conversations, but no one's really in the room or in the space to hear all this stuff. So we wanted to be able to basically capture the cool things we were hearing about and then be able to disseminate information in a bite-sized chunk so that people could listen on their commute in or out of work, and it can be something that people are talking about in the office or in their building or at their school or something like that. And with the new STEEL standards, we've been focusing a lot on the pedagogy shifts that come along with the STEEL standards. And it started out with us just really heavily focusing on the STEEL standards. But what we really realized was that the standards are, about the science content, but actually about the way kids learn. And so if we shift our instruction to help kids learn differently, then we can talk about all kinds of things like curiosity and creativity and just thinking outside of the box.
Really, as it ties into the magazine as well, kind of when Change Ed developed, as Patrice was saying, we started with the STEEL's focus, but that whole integration piece that really, these are best practices and we're finding them in science, T&E, environmental literacy and sustainability, but they're across the board. So that's how we came up with, let's call it Change Ed. Like we want to help be part of the change that is happening in education. And really the idea, as well as, for the podcast and the magazine, came from Patrice saying, we need micro PD. How can we offer professional learning? It has to be a day or half a day or, even an hour. It's just, let's give them micro bits of information. And our desire is that, and our hope is that we're modeling the things that we're seeing in education, that we're facing forward with best practices. And with that, we're hoping that discourse comes out of that we want people to be able to listen to our episodes. We try to keep them short-ish. We used to say 15 minutes-ish, and now they're maybe longer-ish. So we're always leaning into the ish, but we want them to be able to almost Monday morning quarterback, that they go into their school after listening to this episode, and we're hoping there's a pod of them that are listening to it, and that, they walk down the hall and they can start a conversation. That was complete garbage, or wow, somebody sees me, or they know what we're doing, but we want them to be able to have conversations. And really, that's one of the challenges we saw, was that, as Patrice said, that there are conversations happening, but they can be very disjointed, or it depends on who you talk to, what day you talk to them, to what you're hearing. So we thought if we could record this, we would then be able to share it out with everyone, so that we're just exposing them to the conversations that we were fortunate enough to be part of.
Well, and I think to that point, one thing that's become apparent in my time through working at the IU, my wife and I moved here from New Jersey, and stepping into this role, from the outside looking in, or even when you're living this every day, it feels like changes are glacial in education and in government in general, but especially in education. It feels like things just move so slow. But something I have seen is there are these pockets of innovation. There are these pockets of people changing up practices and doing awesome things now. They're not waiting for a wide scale mandated policy to go through before they do something awesome with kids in the classroom. And that happens daily. But the challenge is, one, telling people about it because it's happening in a corner of a building somewhere. And then two, even if you are aware of it happening, how do we share that out? And I think that's what you're both alluding to is, okay, well, we hear good conversations. We see good examples. Let's bring those to the spotlight and make them evident for those to tap into. And I think that that's something that has translated over with the magazine that I've seen, is just the breadth of opportunities that exist, right? So just as we have a breadth of opportunities to share about great things going on in schools and change and help move the needle on practice, we also have a breadth of opportunities to continue to expand that power. So I want to talk about the magazine at all and kind of that's how I've seen it. I don't know if you guys have a different approach.
You want to start since I started last time?
Yes, I do.
Senior Notepad.
Senior Notepad. And
Mr. Post-it.
For those that don't know, Andrew is generally the host or the co-host.
No,
which was the debate
he
before.
Claims to be the host.
He does kick off the episodes. He plays the role of host. So he's here with his notepad, and I think he feels a little bit of a fish out of water. Like you're not sure what I'm going to ask you, are you? You don't know where we're going. You can't lead this.
I'm the asker. I'm like the lawyer who asks the questions. I don't have to give the answers. The magazine was designed as a tool, and really, again, it's kind of, I think, a theme for us is the integrative piece. How can we bring together the work that we're doing? So we started to create these podcasts, and we're like, how can we share this? So I want to give Patrice credit for this again. Clearly, she's the brains of the operation. That she always says, learn something, do something, but also in this concept of micro PD, that we want to have different ways that people can access access this information. So the goal for our magazine was that we present a topic or a concept, and we want to have something that you could read, something you could watch, or something that you could listen to. And the something that you could listen to could happen to be something that we've curated. And then, we're not just putting out other people's thoughts. We're also putting out things that we're developing in-house. We'd love to be able to expand that further so that, the things that are being written are coming from our direction, or things, videos that we're creating. We're not there yet, but there's so much possibility and potential. But even within our connections, right? If someone that we talk to has an article, or they want to write an article, or they have a video. So we're looking at how can we help create real, alive content that people can interact with versus something that's stagnant, that is old, or old videos. And honestly, this is a really good example of the learning process. When we started, our very first thing that we put out was a newsletter.
It was bad.
It was bad.
It
was good.
It was
a good bad.
It was good bad.
And we worked on it. We worked really hard on it. We put it out, and then we were both like, we're not happy, right? I don't like that. We wanted it to be interactive. So that's how we got to the spot where we created this magazine. We wanted whoever was looking at it to be able to interact with it, right? To be able to flip the page and move around, get to where you want to be, instead of, something that was kind of a long, flat, but also like a long laundry list, right? And you're just kind of like buzzing through everything. We wanted you to be able to move around and almost have that 3D effect and 3D feel on a flat screen.
Well, I think what you're sharing in that example, though, is where I'm hearing this term more and more, which kind of scares me because things eventually get captured and thrown into the sphere of becoming cliche and just being a buzzword. But I am hearing the word storytelling pop up a lot this year in my work, not just because of the marketing focus, actually like in education conversations and in video, right? Because it's the point of a video is to tell a story. And I think you're just articulating, though, a very clear desire to help tell not just your individual personal educator story, but everyone's, and how we need to evolve this together, and how, we can go, Patrice, what you were saying earlier, we can go to amazing opportunities and learn. What are we doing with that to pass it on, to make sure it gets into the hands of those that need it, and in a digestible medium to do so? What stands out right now as you look at that breadth of things you covered, whether it's steals or AI or, all the things that we're regularly bombarded with in these roles? What gives you hope in terms of the advancement of your cause of telling that story?
I think we're very fortunate in our roles to be able to interact with teachers across the county and the state. And for me, I'm seeing a lot of teachers that are, despite all the challenges, because right now that being in this field is very challenging across the board. Despite all the challenges, they're doing some amazing things. And so when like you were saying, they are in small pockets, and sometimes they're not noticed in like the grand scheme of things. But for us to be able to be in the spaces and then say, oh my gosh, that's amazing, come tell us about it, has been something that's been really, really cool for us to be able to like shed light on the amazing things that people are doing. That's been the coolest part. And I think that's what continues to fuel us, is that we need to acknowledge that people are doing this amazing work, and how can we get it out there for people?
Something that really stands out for me is the amazing conversations that we get to have with people that we just might not have them with. We obviously, in the podcast, we can only air so much of the conversation, but there are pre-conversations and post-conversations, and the dialogue just continues on. And we've learned so much along the way on the journey. So I feel very fortunate to be able to be in this position and continue the learning. We will go to trainings or conferences, and we're able to kind of vet out who would we want to talk to when we're there, and who do we want to learn more from. And so the podcast allows that gateway to open that door and then have further conversations and continue our learning as well. So it's as much as we want to share it out with others, it's really a learning tool and a learning vehicle for us.
Well, and my favorite part of listening to your guys' episodes, I love the content, I love the stories, but I also love hearing two people get to be themselves and work together. And hearing the two of you have good chemistry, just be who you are as people. And it's so much more genuine. It's great to go to big conferences, hear keynotes. It's great to go to great sessions and hear really smart people talk about things. Sometimes it can lack authenticity. Yeah. And there's nothing quite as authentic. That's why I love this medium. Yeah. I love the ability to sit down and just learn from people, Andrew, kind of like you're describing, and have just an authentic conversation about what we're doing. And so kudos to the two of you for this work. And everybody, in the office that helps contribute, and support what you're doing.
For me, it didn't start out super authentic. I needed like bullet points, and I needed to like feel secure in what I was saying, but it evolved into, I don't even prep really, which is crazy to go from that extreme to the other. So now it's just who we are now, which is terrifying for a lot of people to witness. Yeah.
Yeah. The first podcast that Patrice was on and was part of, and it's like, okay, we're going to do this podcast. She's like, no. And so I'm like, we're going to go. She's like, I need at least 2 or 3 days to prepare.
He's
I'm like,
not telling the story right. 5 minutes before he recorded, he's like, you're going to be on today. And I was like, no, you don't know what your topic is. I don't know who you're talking to. So you're trying to be like, oh, well, so do it in a week. No, you were like, in 5 minutes. A week, I'd be like, okay, cool. 5 minutes. I was like, I got to go. Like, no.
And honestly, my first podcast that I was part of, kudos to you, Brenda, was at the time it was the OPL podcast. And I remember feeling so stiff. You put this microphone in front of me and I just froze, and you would ask a question and I'd be like, yes. And that was it. And you're like, this is a podcast. You got to talk to me. It's a podcast. You know what you're talking about. And so it's been interesting as well to kind of get to a point where, we feel more comfortable having a conversation and interacting with people, even though you've got all this equipment in the room and headphones on.
About 15 minutes in, people start to forget that it's there. Like,
well, and that's the best part. I mean, whenever we do the video work for the IU, my trick of the trade is to waste 10 minutes of time getting them comfortable because I know I'm not going to get there's add mics and all that stuff. Now point a camera at somebody and it just goes, they go. I mean, talk about freezing. People get super nervous, and it is nerve wracking. You want to present well.
Thank you as always for tuning in and listening and joining us on this unique journey where we got to
reuse footage.
Be the interviewed, not the interviewers. Is that cup in front of you? Is that half full or half empty?
Half full, because we didn't have to sit and record another episode. Last time with you is always good.
Nor edit all of my rants, tangents. What do you call them?
I don't know. Make
sure you share this episode and you are following us. If your friends aren't following us, then they are not your friends.
They're not cool. Like Andrew. You're cool.
Is this like a last word thing? Like,
no, you're very cool. I just feel like you need to know that.
Is that how you meant for it to sound? Or you're not cool like Andrew?
Whichever one feels better.
They both sounded the same, actually, coming out of my mouth, with or without the comma.
You take it however you want.
Your intention was hurtful.
My intention was pure and genuine.
I'm pure of heart. Care Bears there. Purity of heart.
Oh, Care Bears. I liked the rainbow one.
Just follow the podcast.